Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial's set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. We broadcast 2 hours daily, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time. And Jason is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. If you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line 605-477-3249. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. Welcome, Guineith.
Hello, Vincent. How are you this morning?
I am well. How about you?
I'm good, thank you. It's actually raining here at the moment. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yes, it's been raining here as well. It's a good thing. The grass is lush. It's green. The cows are all smiling. It was a torrential rain yesterday. We had a couple cyclones touching down in the area. Nothing happened to our farm. They were touching down all around us. I mean, within 10 miles or so of us.
Wow.
But, yeah.
Is that like tornadoes?
Yes. That's exactly what it is. And, these spirals of wind will pick up debris. So lawn chairs go flying around, 2x4s, flower pots. I mean, all these things become projectiles at going, over 100 miles an hour sometimes. And it's really dangerous. So cars get smashed up. And sometimes they even pick up cars and toss them around, tractor trailers. Some of them can be, pretty dangerous. But fortunately, for us, we just had massive flooding. And I don't like the flooding because sometimes there's erosion, and our field might end up as our neighbor's field. Just sometimes the topsoil, just there's so much rain that the grass can't hold back the topsoil. As a matter of fact, that's why you want grass. Grass prevents erosion. That's really why you want it. And so if you don't have your grass growing right, you can lose a lot of topsoil. But one of the things I wanted to mention, Guineith, is I was telling Jason during the just before the intro started for the broadcast today that there's a lot of flooding in Iowa. And one thing that people may not think about if they decide to move to the countryside is when you have flooding like that, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 feet, 12 feet of water, 20 feet of water standing, your septic system is not going to work. Not only is it not going to work, it's not going to work till long after the water has receded. And actually, sometimes they work in reverse. So the downward pressure of the water on the leach field, the septic leach field, will push the water back up the plumbing into the house, and you'll have sewage that used to be in your septic system now will be on the floor in your house.
Yep.
So that's something to think about. Yeah.
I know that you haven't received the Gentleman of Fortune's weekly news yet this week because I'm still working on it because we lost the internet early today because of the storm not damaged because of the storm activity. But I'm going to discuss dry toilet systems. We discuss things like this in the newsletter about living. We have a section in the newsletter called Buccaneering 101, and what it is how to live independently of organised systems and at a very basic level, and how to do so comfortably. And a part of that is, what do you do if you are no longer able to use your flush toilet for whatever reason? But it's very, very interesting that you mentioned that exact topic, because I discussed that this week in the Gentleman of Fortune's weekly news. So you can go across to USA Prepares, and I think you provide a link, don't you? Or you can subscribe.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I do. Page number 1.
Yep, that's good. And you can subscribe to it, and you can find out what to do about that. It's not very comfortable, is it? And I discuss a couple of different dry toileting systems. One of them will work even if the ground is flooded. So it's not an in-ground system.
Why don't we do this?
Is in fact.
Why don't we talk about exactly what you're alluding to? We're talking about outhouses. I mean, that's what they're called in the United States.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes. In Australia, they're called dunnies,
mm-hmm.
because that's where you go to do your dun or to do your poops. Mm-hmm. And yes, I will actually describe how we ought to do that, because there's a pretty crappy company. Important.
There's a pretty crappy company in the United States called Dun and Bradstreet. Is that where they got the word dunny?
Yes, Mr. Dunn for a while, was signing. Actually, he was signing up until very recently documents, although he's been dead for over 20 years, and that's called fraud.
Yep. Dun and Bradstreet calls us every once in a while, and they want to list us, and I keep telling them, no, it's not. We're not going to do it, and they think that we should know that it will help us. We have no concern about letting people know about who we are, what we're doing. We're not interested in participating in their system. So in terms of listed, we're not interested at all, and we will not provide them any information. No.
Yeah, because the other thing is that people can actually turn around and use that information for identity fraud. Is something that people don't always immediately think of.
Right. Right. That's why you don't want to post on Zuckerberg's website your birthdays, your birth year, day, month. I don't suggest people lie. However, Rich Shealy talks about this a lot. And it's very, very important. And that is, if they do it, you should do it. So if you think that your birth date or information about you is going to be misused, don't give them the right information. As a matter of fact, I have lots of birthdays, or at least as I remember them. Right. And I have lots of income levels as I remember them. And all of them are, they're imaginary. I am not going to put down income. I am not going to put down my real birth date unless I absolutely, positively have to. As a matter of fact, Mrs. Finelli and I stopped for a pizza, and it was at Sam's Club, which, I don't like going to Sam's Club anymore. Ever since I had that problem with the optical center at Sam's Club with that millennial, it was just offensive as could be. I don't even want to go into Sam's Club, but we were traveling through town and we were quite hungry, and I wanted to get something inexpensive, and so you can go to Sam's Club and you can buy a pizza in a box for $8.99 plus all the applicable taxes, and you can take it with you, so you can have a piece and then bring the rest of it home and share it with whomever. Well, when I went to sign my receipt I used the Sam's Club credit card. And they said, can you put a name there? And I said, any name? And they said, yeah. So I wrote any name. I signed my credit card receipt, any name. And then they said, what name would you like when we call you? And I said, any name? And they said, any name. So I said, okay, any name. So when the pizza was ready, they called any name. And that's just kind of how it goes. So I refuse to, I always make up names, for whenever I'm going to be called. And I don't want to be known. I want to be unknown. So I make up lots of different names. Any thoughts on that, Guineith? Oh, okay, we lost Guineith, and we're getting in touch with her again. So, class, you can do that. When I'm asked to sign for a credit card transaction, I scribble. And it looks like doodle. And some swoops and some circles and some lines and a couple dots as if there's some eyes, letter I's. I cross a couple of swoops as if they're T's. And yeah, but you can't read it. And sometimes they say, are you a doctor? And I just smile because it looks like chicken scratch. And it is chicken scratch or doodle. I refuse to sign my name the same way over and over and over again. So if I were to sign my name twice in a row within like a minute, each signature would be totally different from the others. Different lengths, different heights, different shapes, and none of them is readable. You can't read a single one of my signatures. You can't say, that spells, you can't. Because I make it that way on purpose. So, Guineith, I was talking about when I'm asked to provide my name for like a pizza, when I call out into the audience, Joe or Tony or Tom or Bob or Sally or whatever, I either make up a name or I use the word any name. So when they call me, they say, any name, and that's me. Because they say, you can put any name on there you want. I go, okay, any name, that's the name I want to use. Any name.
Yep. Yep.
I've had it with society. I've had it with careless, reckless, dangerous people. I've had it with people. Yesterday, I was towing a trailer. And double yellow line, going up a hill, around a curve, a guy passes me in a no passing zone. It's a no passing zone for a reason. Because someone passing can get killed, or even worse than that, get me killed. We'll be right back. Outhouses. And, we have one here at the farm. It was built in the 1940s. And it's still standing. It's about the size of, a little bit larger than a phone booth was. Remember the days when we had public phone booths and you could go to any corner in a city and there'd be this little glass room, if you will, or building. You could sit down and make a phone call or stand up and make a phone call. Well, an outhouse is about that size. And it has, the one on our farm has wood sides, and it has a steel roof, a tin roof, as it's called. And it's got a bench seat made out of wood, and then there's a hole straight down into the ground. And in all the years that it had been used, I don't think it has ever overflowed, ever. And it's a great way to go because natural bacteria takes care of all the waste that goes down there. Guineith, is that the way they're built in Australia?
It's literally raining so hard here I can't hear you.
Wow. It sounds like absolutely. It sounds like you're outside in a massive downpour. That's what it sounds like.
We have got a massive downpour here. I can just barely hear you now, but a few minutes ago, I couldn't hear you at all. I could hear your voice. The other thing is I do have a slight hearing loss as well. so it makes it very difficult for me to hear with background noise going on.
Well, how about this? How about if you talk about outhouses per se in Australia, how they're built and how they work, and I'll just listen as
what
you
was
describe
that, sorry?
it. Can you talk about how outhouses are constructed? And I'll just listen.
Oh, yes. Well, if we need to construct a hothouse here, normally what we have to do is have it so that, because the summers here are so hot, you need to have it so that you can have plastic during the winter that's shade cloth during the summer. Because during what you need for half the year, you need a hothouse that's during the winter, but during the summer, you need a shade house, not a hothouse. Okay, because if you just have a hothouse, then you are going to cook your plants during the summer. So you need to have some sort of a frame, and if I need to build a hothouse here, what I will do is, the star posts, around here we call them star posts, they're metal posts, and you bang them into the ground with a tube-shaped tool with handles on it. I'm sure you have something similar in the US, but around here we call them star posts or star pickets.
Yeah, that's what we do. But yeah, I'm here. But I was asking about outhouses, O-U-T houses, rather than
outhouses.
hot houses.
I thought you meant hot houses.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, outhouses.
No, that's fine. Yeah, sorry, it was the rain. Yeah, outhouses. Absolutely. Okay. The technology that is simplest and best to use around here that can be used in a situation with flooding is this. You get a 20-litre bucket, okay, and what you do, that's a 5-gallon plastic bucket, okay, and you get a suitably large box. So I don't know if you know what a tea chest is. A large wooden box that will fit over the top of the 5-gallon bucket, okay? And you get the 5-gallon bucket and you
Guineith, we're going. I know you can't hear us, but we're going into a break, bottom of the hour break. We'll continue when we get back. Let's hope the rain subsides a little bit and you can find a place that's a little less noisy. Guineith Isaacs is with us. We're talking about building an outhouse, and it's something that you may want to think about, class, because what would you do? What would you do if your toilet system stopped working? What would you do? Now, of course, you'd have to have a place for an outhouse, but in the meantime, Guineith is telling us that you can take a 5-gallon bucket, and these are the buckets that you can buy motor oil in. They used to have laundry detergent available in them, but I think if you go to a farm store, you'll be able to find some 5-gallon buckets. Even Lowe's and Home Depot sell them, probably less than $5 a piece. Plastic buckets, farmers use them for everything. We use them to haul vitamins, minerals, supplements out to the cows. We put dog food in them. We use them for carrying all kinds of things around the farm. But Gwen is saying you take one of those and you build a wooden box over it. And I'm pretty sure she's going to tell us we have to cut a hole in the wooden box. What's next, Guineith?
Yes, that's right. You get a tea chest or some other type of wooden box. You cut a hole in the top of it, okay? And what you do is you put maybe a 2-inch layer of some sort of organic matter such as sawdust, leaf litter, even garden soil will do at a stretch, although it's not ideal. And what you do is you have a 2.5-gallon bucket sitting next to the 5-gallon bucket, which is full of this organic matter, whatever it is that you're using. And you can use straw, you can use chaff, you can use, just about any sort of organic matter that you might have lying around about the place. And what you can do is you fill the 2.5-gallon bucket full of the organic matter, and when you have done your business, you get a really big double handful of this stuff, and you cover your waste. Okay? And you wipe yourself, you put the toilet paper down the bucket before you cover the waste, obviously, and you cover it all until you can't see it anymore, okay? And when you need to do a pee, you do the pee around the outside area of the toilet, not in the toilet, okay? That keeps your moisture levels down in the toilet, and not only that, it also stops vermin from getting into the toilet, okay, from getting into the bucket, because you will find that just about every wild creature out there absolutely hates the smell of human urine. And if you urinate around your toilet area instead of in your toilet, in your outhouse, you will not get bears, coons, wolves, etc., raiding your long drop, because they hate the smell of human urine, but they quite like to eat feces. And that's it, depending on what wildlife you have in your area, that can be a health hazard. I know that, for instance, Rich Scheben has bears where he is, and to meet Bruno when you're going for your midnight walk would probably at least give you a pretty good fright, and might even be really bad for your health. Do you know what I mean, Vincent?
Sure, because outhouses are typically outside of the main house. And, class, if you want to look one up, you can go to the internet and you can do a search on this. 1909, as in 1909. 1909 space outhouse, OUTHOUSE space plans. And you'll find some really nice, simple, easy to construct plans for building your outhouse. And if you have land, I suggest that you start construction of one of these, because it's a lot easier to make them when you can get 2x4s and 4x4s and wooden siding. It's a lot harder to make one of these when you don't have access to a building supply company. Yeah. And you can use composition shingles or you can make it inexpensively. You can make it elaborately. You can make them with a vent pipe, which makes it a lot more pleasant. There are a lot of neat things that you can do. And these are the same designs that have been used for over 100 years. And they're improved upon over the designs that have been used for hundreds of years before that. So why would you not want to have an outhouse? I don't know. It makes sense to have one because I honestly believe that things are getting worse, not better. And all we need is one grid collapse to make everything miserable, because when that happens, within minutes of that happening, the storm source, the storm systems, the water treatment systems will begin to stop right then and there. The pumps stop. The sewage treatment facilities will start to back up, and they'll start backing up the hill. And if you have a low-lying property, you get to find out about it first. And then if your neighbors are up the hill a little bit, they'll learn about it just a little bit after you do. And all the sewage is going to run downhill. And if you're downhill, you get to experience it. And it'll come right out of your toilet.
Yeah,
absolutely
that is
true.
Actually true.
It is true.
The advantage of this bucket in a box system is if you find yourself in an apartment, you can still use this system. The only thing is that you're going to have to, deposit your urine somewhere else. And so I think that everybody should at least learn how to make this sort of system. It's very easy to make. All you need is a tea chest and a 5-gallon bucket and a 2.5-gallon bucket and some sort of organic matter to bury the waste. And it's so easy, you know.
There's even another way. The reason I know about this is we have one. My mom loved antiques. She loved old furniture, and she would refinish it.
Commode.
And she bought this chair.
Get a commode.
Well, here's what she did. We have a bunch of commodes here. And what is a commode? Well, here's what she did. She bought this chair, and it was a 4-legged chair with a spindled back, just a chair. And the previous owner took a saw and cut a hole out in the chair. And I'm pretty sure they put the equivalent of a 5-gallon bucket under this chair. And the hole was sawed so that it was tapered. It's a round hole, but the hole was smaller on the bottom side of the thick board chair than it was on the top side. So this, we'll call it a plug. And I would say it was probably maybe 10, 12 inches in diameter. And you could put this plug right back in. So it was a hole sawed in the seat of the chair. But because it was tapered when it was cut, you could put the plug back in. So you could sit on it as a chair, or you could use it as a chair for doing your business. And we still have it. My mom sterilized it and finished it, and we only use it as a chair once in a while. But it's kind of an oddity. But actually, you could do that.
Yeah.
But who would think of doing that, right?
And that's actually something else I mentioned. The other, if you lack carpentry skills, okay, here's a really, really good, simple way to make the actual building, the actual structure of a outhouse, okay, not the mechanical bit, the house that goes around it. You go to your local tip, okay, to your local rubbish dump. And a lot of rubbish dumps now, they have recycling shops. And one of the items that tends to go through the recycling shop on a regular basis is U-shaped shower cubicles. Do you know what I mean, Vincent?
Yes, you're talking about a one-piece fiberglass or plastic shower stall, 32 inches across, 34, 36 inches, yes. Mm-hmm.
That's right. Well, you take one of those, okay, and they have the tray for the shower cast into the one piece, okay. You can take one of those and you can dig yourself an appropriate U-shaped hole in your yard, okay, maybe about 12 inches deep. You put the shower cubicle into the hole and you backfill the hole upside down so that the drain plug is at the top. And then you can install a ventilation system in the drain plug before you install it, that is. And that is an absolutely brilliant cubicle.
Took the words right out of my mouth. Took the words right out of my mouth.
You can put a curtain on it. You can get the shower curtain poles, okay, from your favorite big box store, and they screw into place at each end. And you can install a shower curtain on there, and you've got your privacy. And you just install it upside down and facing away from your main building that you live in. and towards somewhere there's not going to be anybody looking at you. And that's I've seen that done here in Australia, and I thought that is absolutely brilliant.
Well, it really is. It really is. And as you were saying it, the word that came to my mouth is, well, actually a couple words, absolutely brilliant. Because I've got a mental picture of exactly what you're talking about. And class, if you want to see it, just go to your favorite search engine. That probably should be DuckDuckGo, DuckDuckGo.com, and look up shower stall as outhouse, and you'll see it. Guineith and I are talking about kind of an unpleasant topic, but absolutely one that needs to be addressed. I don't know if it's ever been addressed before on the radio, but I did a little research during the break, and you can buy a toilet seat with a lid that seals out odors for about $12. And this particular toilet seat fits on top of a 5-gallon bucket. So you get your $5.
That makes things even easier.
Yeah, this is literally a toilet seat, a round toilet seat with a lid, and it snaps right on a 5-gallon bucket. It's literally about the price of a standard toilet seat, $12 for an inexpensive toilet seat. But now, just bear in mind, you still have a problem. Once you're done using it, eventually you're going to have to empty it out. So this is not a long-term solution. This is a kind of a temporary solution. I actually like the.
I have an answer there too, Vincent.
Let's hear that.
I have an answer. Okay. In fact, there's a few different answers depending on your ick level. Okay. One of them is if you have fruit trees. Okay, which everybody, if you're into preparedness and you haven't planted fruit trees, you're not into preparedness, in my humble opinion. If you don't know how to grow fruit trees, you should learn.
I agree.
Okay, because if you find yourself in a good down situation and you don't have fruit, you are going to, within just 1 month, you're going to have a really, really serious problem on your hands. You're going to get scurvy unless you have some source of vitamin C, unless you have fruit trees of some kind growing, okay? You use, you compost the waste, okay? So you might have a few of these 5-gallon buckets on rotation, and it will take one couple about a week to fill a 5-gallon bucket, okay? And then you put the lid on and you set it to one side, and then you get another 5-gallon bucket and you put the toilet lid on that, and, you put it somewhere and you leave it for about 6 months. So in the end, you'll have about 26 buckets, okay, lined up in a row if there's just 2 of you, and proportionally more. So this is going to be a bit of an exercise. But after 6 months, what you can do is you can use that waste, which will have broken down into compost by that time. You can put it on fruit trees to fertilize them. And it's quite safe to do so. And the fruit trees will love it, especially if they're citrus trees, because citrus trees are hungry little creatures. They really are. And you will find that you have the best fruit trees in the whole district. But I would not be planting vegetables under the fruit trees. If you wanted to plant something underneath the fruit trees as a part of a permaculture system, I would recommend planting either rosemary or lavender or sage, for this reason. All of them are antibacterial and antiviral in their natural state. So you are not going to get sick from eating rosemary or sage from this sort of system, because rosemary and sage are both naturally very strongly antibacterial. That they're going to kill, in other words, they're going to kill any germs that try to jump on them from the compost, but that's a remote possibility. Something else that I've seen, okay, is people who feed their chickens on compost piles, on manure piles, okay, and they put their waste on the manure pile that they feed to the chickens. Now, like I say, you do this at your own risk. Okay.
Guineith, hold that thought. Let's talk about that after the top of the hour break. All set? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Guineith Isaacs is with us, and we've been talking about chickens, we've been talking about compost, and we've been talking about human waste. Guineith, please continue.
Okay. Now, I'd like to start this segment with a big caveat. I am absolutely not saying that you should do this. I'm just saying that in an emergency situation, at a pinch, this is what a person could do, okay? People who feed their chickens on manure piles generally use pig waste, okay? That is the waste, the dry waste out of pig pens. So instead of hosing down the pig pens, they will get in there with a shovel and they will make, in a wheelbarrow, and they will make a pile of manure and they'll cart it away with the wheelbarrow and take it to the chicken pen, okay? And they'll dump it in the chicken pen and the chickens will scratch through it and they will break up the lumps, they will eat the worm eggs, and they will eat any worms that they find, and they will turn it into a fine, very fine granular sort of stuff. And then after a period of time, that will compost away into the most marvelous garden soil that you have ever seen. Okay? The risks associated with dealing with pig waste and the risks associated with dealing with human waste are more or less the same, because pigs and humans have such a similar gut that we actually share the same set of pathogens. Okay? So if you can dispose of pig waste safely in a particular manner, then you can dispose of human waste theoretically in the same way, because you are dealing with the same pathogen set, okay? But you have to make that pile quite big for it actually to work, for it to raise the temperature that you need to raise, okay? The chickens will scratch around on the outside, but on the inside of the pile, the temperature will get quite hot. And I would say that the average household does not generate enough poop to make a pile that is big enough to generate the sort of temperature that you need to be able to kill the pathogens. So that is an absolute last resort. You would have to have such a chicken feeding system where the chickens eat off the manure pile anyway, okay? If you did, then theoretically you could add the human manure to that pile, and you would not have to worry about cross-contamination with the food supply, because chickens do not lay their eggs where they eat. They find an isolated corner right away from where they're eating, and it's usually in a corner or up on a shelf or somewhere dark or somewhere isolated, but it is never, ever, ever in the same place that they eat from, okay? And, it's just, you like I say, you do that at your own risk. But I'm just saying there's in a lot of parts of the world, and even in the United States, there are farmers out there who supplement their chicken's diet by building a pile of compost in the chicken pen and having the chickens scratch the waste out of it. And most frequently, that compost comes from the pig pen. Okay, does that make sense, Vincent?
Oh, it certainly does. And when we were planting our garden, we were rototilling it over the weekend for probably the third time, picking the rocks out of it. The chickens were in. We have a fenced-in garden. It's raised bed. It's big enough to put a small rototiller in there and walk around back and forth following it. The chickens were in there looking for grubs and worms. So they love them. As you said, they really love them. And it's a great relationship because they use the bugs in the production of eggs. It all works really, really well together. But I have a feeling that there are very few people who are thinking about what we're talking about today, outhouses and waste disposal and doing it for yourself. Because I think most people, the GDP, are thinking more like, how are they going to get their cell phone working? That's really what they're interested in. But I can guarantee 2 hours later, the cell phone is going to be second place in their thought process, where to use a facility. That's going to be number one. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll tell you something else as well. And this specifically relates to people who cannot get outside safely in a collapse scenario. This is a possible way of dealing with your urine, okay? Because if you are planning to shelter in place, which I think that if you right now at this time are living in a metropolis, you need to sell whatever real estate you have there, and you need to buy a place in the country, and you need to do it as soon as possible. And you can buy places in some places in rural communities are still selling for the low five figures. Okay, you can still buy a small patch of farmland out there in the United States. I have seen them advertised. Even in Missouri, there are still small blocks of land. We're talking about between 1 and 20 acres for under $10,000. And you're a fool if you can't figure out some way to go and get a hold of one of these blocks of land in the Ozarks for $10,000. And I'm sure that you could back me up there, Vincent.
I can.
It won't be a big piece of land.
Well, I can tell you that there are 10-acre, 20-acre parcels, and people have bought them very inexpensively. And what they've done is they got a prefabricated outbuilding. Let's say 10 feet by 20 feet long. Some people may call that a large storage shed, and they would have that delivered. And they would have an outhouse, and they would hook it up to a well, and they would hook it up to the grid, and that was their home, 10 feet by 20 feet, 200 square feet, and they'd live in it. And there are a bunch of these all over. Other people are looking at storage containers, shipping containers, which you can get a 20-foot long shipping container. It's all steel. A heavy wooden floor. I mean, very, very strong for about $2,000 delivered, maybe $2,200. You can get a reciprocating sawzall, cut out windows, put in vinyl or aluminum windows, and cut out an opening for a door. And now you have a really strong container to live in with at least one or two windows and a door. You might want to change the roof, put a roof pitch on it so that the rain will, tend to run off it rather than sit on top of the roof. Very, very strong, very inexpensive. And people are doing that today. You're absolutely right.
Yep.
Getting out of the city is a big thing. I would not want to be in a city today. Absolutely not.
That's right. We'll get on to that in a moment. But if you find that you have to shelter in place and you're in an apartment, this is what you do with your urine, okay? You make sure that you have beforehand a stash of PET soft drink bottles, and you store the urine in the soft drink bottles, okay? Now, urine is actually, unless you have something like a urinary tract infection, urine is sterile, okay? And if you store it in a bottle, it will, over time, chemically break down into ammonium nitrate, okay, which is ammonia. And ammonium nitrate can be used actually for cleaning. So, and you can also use it for a variety of other purposes. And if you want to find out what those purposes are, then go on the internet and type in uses for ammonium nitrate, and I'm sure that you'll come up with it. Garden fertilizer springs to mind. So you can use it for fertilizing your hydroponic system. You will have to have your phosphorus and your potassium in there as well. But yes, you can do that and use your watered down ammonia to fertilize your green plants that you're growing in place. But like I say, personally, I wouldn't do that. I would move out to the country and plant my plants in the soil. I think that's a much better idea than trying to, live in place. And I'm not sure if I actually sent you the email about the girl, the adolescent girl who got attacked in Melbourne this last week. Did I send that email off?
No, I don't have that, but I do have a quick comment.
Yeah.
And you're talking about human waste. I know a guy who, as a business, has a septic system pumping truck. So he will come out to your property and he will pump out the septic system. Now the question is, what does he do when he has a full tank load of sewage in his truck? Well, he has a farm. And what he does is he spreads this liquid sewage on his farm. And I asked him about the concerns. He said, no, son takes care of everything, except he won't do that if someone has had chemotherapy. Because he said what happens next is the chemotherapy will kill his fields. Think about that, class. We'll be right back. So in the last segment I mentioned that I know a man who pumps out septic systems. And the human waste is acceptable if you have plenty of sunny days and you spread it around lightly on fields, according to him, that the sun will disinfect the bacteria and it breaks down very quickly and it will help your fields grow. But for those of you who wash out paintbrushes and put all kinds of things down the drain, you might not want to apply those kinds of things on your fields. So keep in mind what's happening in the farming world is some farmers are applying human waste on their fields, and they grow grass on those fields.
That.
Yeah, right.
Fruit trees is one thing, but, fields that you're going to, grow lettuces or tomatoes on, I wouldn't be doing that because the risk of fecal contamination of the food supply is too great. And, this is, I think, why you're getting a lot of E. coli alerts with relation to lettuce, tomatoes, squashes, and all this sort of thing. But the difference with fruit trees is that you apply the manure to the roots and the fruit is born, sometimes, 5, 6, 7 feet above the ground surface. Okay?
Right.
So the two are not going to meet.
Right. Well, here's what's happening. The government corporations at the state level and at the municipal level are taking the solid waste that is the result of evaporated waste from the sewage treatment plants in cities. And they're saying, you can have this free fertilizer. And I think it was called Philly soil, Philly as in Philadelphia soil. And this was sludge, and you could go with your van or your pickup truck, and they would load that in for you, and you could take that home and spread that around on your yard. The problem with it is the municipal water treatment systems have all the industrial waste that's gone down the drain. I'm talking about hospital waste. I'm talking about manufacturing companies' waste, whatever goes down the drain. And, you know, the least of the concerns, although it's a big concern for me, is how many people will wash out their paintbrushes in the kitchen sink. They've just painted that room, painted the trim, painted whatever it is, and they want to, you know, since good paintbrushes are really expensive, $20, $30 a piece, you don't want to use them once and throw them away. So you want to wash them out very carefully, and you use detergent, dishwashing detergent, and you use warm water, and you wash it out in the kitchen sink. And all of that paint that's not stuck on the walls goes down the drain to mix with all the other paint and the oils and the insecticides and the heavy metals and whatever else people throw down the drain. That ends up in the water treatment plant, or the sewage treatment plant, I should say. And then you get to put that on your land. It's crazy. And we had a neighbor who made the news when we lived in Virginia. This man lived near us, just down the road from us, but he had a 300-acre farm miles away. And what he did was he had that sludge sprayed on his fields, and it made the grass grow like crazy. It really, the grass loved that liquefied poop and industrial waste from the cities. But his neighbors hated him because it smelled, the word was funky. It smelled funky whenever it was humid out for years because he had so much sprayed.
Wow.
Now, what was he doing with that? He was feeding that grass to his cows. So you can have organic, it can be called organic beef, which has been fed with grass that's been fertilized with human sewage and industrial waste. Think about that, class. So as we go down this road to self-destruction, I'm talking about humanity, there's only one way. There's only one way I believe you can survive. And that is if you take matters into your own hands and grow your own food and do things for yourself. Because you're being lied to every week. Class, if you'd like to learn more about Guineith Isaacs, you can go to usaprepares.com. Click on page 1. You'll see a link that will take you to her Gentleman of Fortune newsletter. And Guineith, you know, there are plenty of articles in the news right now talking about what is happening in cities with people who are homeless. They are defecating and urinating in the streets. I've seen it myself years ago. I was going through a city, and I was in traffic, and this guy walked up to one of those storefronts in the city, and it was one of these storefronts where the door was moved in a couple feet from the front window. So the door was recessed, if you will, and it was just a door that would let the owners in through their own private kind of a door as compared to the main door of the business, the glass door. And this guy just walked up to the door, pulled down his pants.
Dropped his jocks and did a dump.
Right there on the city, right on the sidewalk. He urinated right on the door as if as if it were, a dog and a fire
urinal.
hydrant. Yeah. Yeah, that's what it was. And this was many years ago, and of course it's gotten way, way worse. San Francisco, there are needles all over the sidewalks, people sleeping on the sidewalks, on the side of the road, camping under bridges, living there. As things get worse, I think there's going to be a greater and greater need for sanitation, if you want to call it that. And that's why I think it's so important to consider
dealing
an outhouse.
with your own waste.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
and
right.
why is it?
I've got a couple of issues, okay? I want to go back for just a moment. The thing is, farmers using municipal waste on their fields. There's things they're not considering here, okay? Using your own waste from your own family on your own plants is one thing, okay? Using municipal waste on your plants is quite another, because you have absolutely no control over the health of the people who that waste has come from. And all it takes is one third world immigrant to bring a really nice case of cholera with them, okay? And that gets pooped into the municipal, sewage treatment system, and the sludge gets put onto some farmer's field, and you are talking about a cholera outbreak on the magnitude of the tens of thousands with people who get infected from whatever was grown on that field. And there are farmers who are using this municipal waste on their tomato and lettuce crops, which is completely unconscionable, in my humble opinion. Okay? But there's farmers that are doing that. They're not thinking. And it's not just cholera. Cholera kills massive, massive numbers of people that it infects. I would say it probably kills the majority of people that it infects. You had cholera outbreaks as little as 150 years ago in London town and in other cities around the world that wiped out like 2/3 of the population of the place. But it's not just cholera. It's yellow fever, hepatitis A, B, and C, okay, are all spread through fecal contamination. And most of these diseases are almost unheard of in the general population of people like you and me. We never have to deal with them because we have good hygiene habits. We've had good hygiene habits for, generations, and our families have not been drug users, and there's been no, there hasn't been things like sexual immorality and prostitution and all of this sort of stuff that goes on that leads to these diseases outbreaking, okay? Most hepatitis, most people who get hepatitis, they have bad lifestyle habits. They've been using drugs. They've been, sleeping around or whatever, and that's how that disease is spread. But it's also spread through fecal contamination. Okay, and if you get one person who, for instance, has hepatitis A in a population, that person poops into the municipal supply, and that waste gets spread over a farmer's field, that hepatitis is going to be spread to the four winds. And that's a really, really serious health issue, Vincent.
Okay. We have heard for at least 8 years on USA Prepares, 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food, and we die. We all know that. Don't need to say it again. But what you never hear, or almost never hear, is 2 hours without toilets. Right? If you go to preparedness expos, you'll see lots of information about food, water purification, but hardly ever, and we've had them at ours, but hardly ever will you see the human waste solutions. And here's something I find absolutely fascinating. And you know, I'm kind of grinning because I'm looking at the statistics. I looked at how well we were doing with our broadcast, and our numbers were way up in the beginning of this broadcast. Now, since we've been talking about human waste, human sewage, toilets, outhouses, composting, we've dropped.
Out, right?
We've dropped considerably. Guys who are at the bottom.
Needs to be talked about.
I'm delighted. You know what? I actually don't care. Believe it or not.
Yeah.
We used to say things like we'd like to help people. I hardly want to do that anymore. It sounds kind of selfish, but there are so many takers. They have, my son said, "Hey, Dad," I was with him in the truck yesterday, and he said, "Remember those expos? And you would have all those people who would, do you the favor of coming to your expo, and you had to pay for their tickets. Remember that? Remember those days?" And that's what happened. There's so many people who are willing to take, and I'm delighted that we have dropped in ratings today, talking about outhouses, composting, human sewage, human waste, industrial waste, diseases, and how you can avoid them and how you can make it better. Because this tells me that there are going to be fewer people around to mess up the planet when things go south. Because I'm looking at the broadcasts that are jumped above us. And these are broadcasts that were near the bottom of the ranking. They have jumped above us because they're probably talking about baseball and football and basketball and, who's got the best sneakers and the best donuts and the best hamburgers and those kinds of things. So, it sounds kind of funny, but I actually mean something. I mean it. I really mean what I just said. I don't care.
They're actually missing out. I'll tell you how they're missing out. Because when I was at college, I didn't study liberal arts. I studied environmental science, and I studied sewage treatment. At Melbourne University, and if I wanted to, I could go out there and get a six-figure job as a sewage engineer, sewage treatment engineer. I could do that. I would know how to do that. I was trained by some of the finest experts in the treatment of poop in the whole of Australia. I'm a world-class trained sewage treatment expert. And they're tuning out. Well, that's them that's missing out because, sewage systems are something that you have to get right or you can forget about the rest of it. Because if you don't get sewage treatment right, there isn't going to be a rest of it because there's going to be massive disease outbreaks. And epidemiology is, and sewage treatment go hand in fist. So many diseases are spread because people don't deal with their poop properly. And it's even bubonic plague. People say, bubonic plague is spread by fleas on rats. Well, yes and no. There are as many plague rats in London today as what there ever were. The difference is the plague rats that are in London today, this is the black Norwegian rat, is the one that carries plague, bubonic plague. They live in the sewers, and they moved into the sewers when the sewers got built because that's where the poo was. Plague rats, Norwegian rats, eat feces. And that is why this is so important. That's why you need to put your ears into go mode when we start talking about you need to pee around the box, not in the box. Because if you pee around the box, rats will not get into your poo-poos, and they will not spread diseases. If you don't pee around the box, you could very well get rats going into that box and eating your excrement. And they will go and they will spread whatever disease they need to spread, and they'll breed because they'll have a food supply. You've got to get this right, or there isn't going to be anything else.
Got a couple comments about some of the things that you said. I'd like to share with our class when we come back. Very serious broadcast today, class, and not many are paying attention, which I think is fine, because there'll be less damage to the planet when those people who aren't paying attention are no longer with us. We'll be right back. So here's something that I've noticed during my lifetime. If you looked at television back in the 1950s, the length of time of the average shot was about 15 seconds, between 10 and 15 seconds, more toward the 15-second mark. Today, the average length of a film shot, the average is just over 5 seconds, 5.4 seconds.
Wow.
Our attention span is so short that the filmmakers have to just keep changing the scenes to keep us interested. Now, what does that mean to USA Prepares? Yes. So when I first started radio, a little over 8 years ago, I was told rapid fire, point, counterpoint, short answers, short questions, boom, 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 boom. I said, I'm not interested. I'm still not interested, and I'm not going to do it. I am not going to appeal to the millennials with a short attention span. They either have to catch up to us
Vincent?
Yes.
You're absolutely right. And you know how I know you're right? Just these last few days, I joined a new Facebook group, okay? It was a pirate group because I wanted to, see what was happening in the pirate community out and about on the Internet. And so I joined this pirate group, and I actually did about 3 posts on this pirate group, okay? And one of them was about 1,500 words long, and it explained my background of being George Wilson, okay, and Bartholomew Roberts and Archie and I and the whole thing, okay, with photos. And I thought, this is great. People will be so interested in hearing this, okay? And it got, I think, 2 or 3 likes on Facebook, okay? I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. Now let's try this. And I wrote a second post, and I put it in one of these, funky Facebook backgrounds that you get. And I wrote, who else out there knows or suspects that they are a reincarnated pirate? And guess how many people I got interacting with that post? Over 60 people in a group that has maybe 120 members.
Mm-hmm.
That's around half the population of that community. That was the attention span that they had.
Mm-hmm.
With regards to the 2 or 3 that sat down and read my other post and said, this is great. And I wrote anything that I write on the Internet. I write it to the same standard. I write everything to the same standard. And I'm sure that you can testify to that, Vincent.
Absolutely.
So I am a world-class writer.
You are.
And, yeah. Well, I'm trained to be, and a world-class researcher. But people don't want to read. They just do not want to read.
Guineith, I was at...
Yeah, I'm gobsmacked.
Well, and you should be. I was at a store that sells used things. They sell used building materials, doors, cabinets, countertops, plumbing, everything you could think of. If it's left over from a building project or appliances have been taken out, they can be brought to this particular store and resold. It's a charity, allegedly. Well, there were 2 sets of encyclopedias there. And normally when books are donated, they sell for $1 a piece. Well, we asked the price of this set of encyclopedia. And they said, well, no one really wants them. So 50 cents a piece. Can you imagine? Can you imagine buying a set of encyclopedia for $10? Nobody wanted them. Just me.
People don't want them.
They don't know how to read. It's too hard. Guineith, thanks so much for being with us.